Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Success Harbor Podcast with George Mazzaros, where it's all about making success happen for you.
Hi, everyone. This is George Mazzaros with Success Harbor, and I have Amanda Abala with me, and she is an Amazon best-selling author of Making Money Your Honey, Millennial Life and Business Coach. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you for being here, Amanda. I wanted to ask you what inspired you to start a coaching business, and what were you doing prior to starting this business?
Well, that's kind of a long story. It kind of happened really organically. I did not plan to start a coaching business. I did not go into blogging with the intention of coaching. I actually started as a freelance writer in 2010, and I graduated from college and I spent, in the middle of the recession, and I spent 6 months not being able to find a job. And within those 6 months, I basically said, okay, I can't sit here and not do anything because it's driving me nuts. And I went into a deep depression and I was having anxiety. And, one day I kind of just woke up and said, if I can't find a job, why don't I make my own job? So I literally Googled how to start freelance writing online, and I made all the mistakes and all that kind of stuff.
So tell me, what mistakes you've made?
Oh, writing for content mules, not charging enough money. I think the first month I even started doing this, I made about $5 for the entire month. And it sounds really scary, but in actuality, those are probably the best $5 I ever made, because that's when I realized, and that's when the real shift happened. Like, oh, girl, you just got paid doing something you like to do. So it's really interesting because most people go into entrepreneurship or running their own businesses because they hate their jobs. I was already making money on my own before I got a regular job, and the intention was always to eventually not have to live off of a regular job. I just did it out of necessity.
So you're doing coaching. Coaching is one of the things that you do, and if you could train someone just one skill, let's say that maybe the first skill says to be an entrepreneur, what would be that skill?
You have to be open to opportunity. I think, and that's kind of a huge answer, but let me explain that. Basically, oftentimes when people go into entrepreneurship, or not even entrepreneurship, just anything else in life, they think, things need to look a certain way, or it needs to be a certain way, or a deal falls through and it's the end of the world. And we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be successful. And that pressure and that perfectionism and that rigid way of looking at entrepreneurship, or anything in your life really, only blocks you from seeing all these creative opportunities that are right in front of you that could be 100, 1,000 times better than what you would have ever imagined for yourself. So just, really learning how to roll with the punches and being open to what is presented in front of you, and not being so controlling and strict and rigid in the way things are supposed to look like.
And when you work with people, do you see that they need a lot of help in that area? Do you see that it's not a natural talent for a lot of people to
Yeah, in the beginning, yes. And it's not that it's not a natural talent. I really believe anybody can do it. And one of the things I do with my clients is I help them to start learning how to trust their own intuition when it comes to this stuff. But I think it's a lot of social conditioning. We're raised to believe that businesses look a certain way. I remember, the first section in my book is really driving it home for people. Like, even if you're making a few dollars, you are legally an entrepreneur. You don't need to make that much for Uncle Sam to come take his cut, So really just driving that home for people. It doesn't have to look a certain way. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just start, just go, just put one foot in front of the other. You will figure stuff out as you go along, and you will start learning how to trust yourself to make the decisions you need to make.
And what made you decide to write "Make Money Your Honey"? What was it? How did that idea come about?
Well, I quit my job finally after 2.5 years of working full time and starting a side business and moving from freelance writing to coaching and all these things. I quit my job finally, and it was a difficult decision for me to make. Because again, it's one of those things we're accustomed to, like stability equals full-time job. And, now I realize that's not true. But at the time, it was really intense for me. In order for me to get to where I have been, which anybody can do, by the way, I've really had to get very deep and very comfortable and just really go there when it came to the stories I had about work and money. And, one of the biggest things I drive home in my book, especially in the last section, when we really start getting deep into it, is this whole idea of where we've picked up stories from. Where is it? The news? The news is nuts when it comes to like finances and careers and entrepreneurship. Like, anyone listening to this, just stop listening to the news. Stop. Just don't even listen. Just do your thing. And our parents, society, just as a whole, we're kind of raised to believe that money doesn't grow on trees. Work needs to be difficult. You have to hate your job. That's life. And those are things I hear often. So in order for me to get to where I've managed to go and to keep going to where I'm going, because it ain't over yet, I've really had to get comfortable with the money story. So it started off as just kind of writing my own story because people were asking me for it. And then I started doing informational interviews with, past and present coaching clients, with readers of my blog. I built up quite a following in about 2.5 years. Colleagues, friends from home. I just started asking people, when it comes to pursuing the kind of work that you love, what are your biggest challenges? And it always came back to money. So, that's pretty much how it came about.
And what does it take? How many books do you have to sell to become an Amazon best-selling author? And more importantly, how would somebody create an Amazon best-selling book? What have you done? How did you promote your book? Any advice in that area?
Well, it's really funny. I actually can't answer how many books it takes to sell and have an Amazon bestseller, because I kind of promised myself that the day it launched I wouldn't look at the sales numbers because I didn't want to put that kind of.
Can you give us a range?
Like,
a range?
I really have no idea. I think it goes by hour. I think it's how many books you sell in an hour. And if you're outselling all the other books in that category, then it starts moving up. I think that's how it works with Amazon. But honestly, I found out because one of my business coaches actually sent me a message that day. She goes, "You're officially an Amazon bestseller." And I'm like, "What do you mean? I'm an Amazon bestseller. What are you talking about?" And she sent me the screenshot. And then it just kept climbing from there. And now, in terms of creating an Amazon bestseller, I actually have a whole on-demand class about this, and on my website, I did an entire class on self-publishing and marketing. And it's two really important things. So the first thing is just giving people what they want. I mean, I got out there and I started asking questions, and I said, "How can I help you? What do you need to know? What do you need help with in order to achieve this new idea of work?" And the second thing was that I stopped trying to control it so much. I really just infused the book with this intention of whoever needs it is going to find it, and they're going to get what they need from it, and I just have to trust that.
And what platforms did you use to reach out to people to find out what is it that they want?
Skype, Google Hangouts, email, phone. I mean, anything that just getting on the phone.
Okay. So basically your own personal network and business network?
Yep.
Okay.
And readers, and I pulled emails upon emails that I had coming in from my website from readers of questions that they had. And I really just tried to answer everyone's questions. And it was a combination of that plus my story, because people, I mean, if you go to my website right now, you're going to see like 300 plus blog posts. Who has time to read all that, So it was just like a comprehensive place where they can get an introduction to me and what I do, but also where they could get some really tangible steps. And the cool thing about my book is that not only does it serve as an introduction for new people, but my private coaching clients can go back and use it over and over and over again as a sort of like Cliff Notes version of what we work on together during our sessions.
So tell me, you mentioned early on when you started out with freelancing, writing, and everything. What was the biggest mistake? I mean, that wasn't really a mistake because, I think you mentioned it was a great learning experience. Money really wasn't the issue at that point. But in general, what do you think was the biggest mistake you made in your business so far?
Well, first of all, mistakes are always learning experiences. And that goes back to what I said in the beginning, just always being open to opportunity. That's one of the ways to be open to opportunity. You mess up, you make a mistake, something doesn't go the way you wanted it to, look at it. What can you learn from it and how can you do better next time? So that's really important. But I would say the real game changer for me was when I started asking for help. And I spent so long trying to do everything by myself, and I was just completely burned out. And when I finally started asking for help, which I should have done sooner rather than later, that's when things really started to change.
And what big mistakes do you see others make in business, either when they start or when they think about starting a business, or even somebody that just wants to take their business to the next level?
Well, definitely one of the biggest mistakes that I see is this whole idea of form versus content, which I talk about in my book. So a lot of people get hung up on the form, what it's supposed to look like, what the branding looks like, what their invoices look like, what the syntax of a sentence on their website. They get hung up on things like that when in reality, none of that stuff matters. None of that stuff is going to make you any money. And a lot of that stuff you figure out as you go along. And instead, what I teach people to do is to kind of focus on, how does this make you feel? How are you being of service to other people? How can you help other people? What really turns you on about what you're doing, and what doesn't turn you on, so you can just drop it or outsource it to someone else. So really just this whole idea that people get hung up on what it should look like instead of how it feels and what value they're providing for people. And once you figure out how you feel and the value that you're providing for people and how you're helping them and what you really love, that's when you start figuring out all this other stuff. How are you going to figure out your branding and how to talk to people if you don't get out there and start asking them questions and trying to help them? It's like trying to do it backwards.
Yeah. It's interesting because I also own a web design / marketing company, and we design business cards and logos all the time, and we have people come to us and they're obsessed over a pixel moved to the left or the right.
But they
don't care about but they don't have any clients lined up. They have no idea how they're going to get any leads or business. And I think to myself, how are these people going to make it? They're just worrying about it. Yeah, I agree. There is a place for good design, and obviously that's the business we're in, and I care about it. But people just focus on the wrong things sometimes. So.
Yeah, and that goes back to that, controlling it needs to look a certain way kind of a thing. And oftentimes, and I'm not saying with everyone, but oftentimes, a lot of times people use that as kind of like procrastination because they're either scared to, actually start this business, or they don't know where to start, or they're overwhelmed, so they just start focusing and nitpicking on little details instead of going out there and getting leads.
What do you think is the biggest time waster for entrepreneurs? I mean, this could be either, for in your experience, or people that you help in their own businesses. One
of the biggest mistakes I've seen is seeing people, and I guess this goes back to details, but seeing people stress out about Facebook and Twitter numbers. Like, oh my gosh, I need to have 40,000 fans on Facebook. And it's like, oh, well, Facebook's messing with the numbers anyway, so who cares? Because only like 1% of them are going to see what you're posting, right? And number two, focus on building relationships, not bringing numbers. If you have 40,000 people on Facebook or 40,000 people on Twitter, it doesn't matter if you're not talking to them.
Yeah, vanity metrics, right?
Huh?
Vanity metrics.
Yeah, people waste a lot of time just like numbers, and they don't realize, hey, those numbers alone, that's not what's going to build your business.
So you have achieved a lot of success in your own business, but if you could go back to the beginning, would you do anything differently?
That's a really good question. I don't think so, because even though, for example, I say like maybe I should have started asking for help sooner. Maybe in some ways, and this goes back to learning, like if I'd asked for help sooner, I would not have knowledge in a bunch of different areas that I need to have knowledge in. I may outsource my accounting, for example, but at least know basics, or I may outsource something else, but at least I know basics of how it works. I know my way around WordPress and things like that. So, I don't think I would really do anything differently because everything's just kind of built up to this moment.
Okay. And if you had to emulate some people, either, in your own field or in business in general, who do you look up to, or who do you think is, this one really got it all together?
I really like Gabrielle Bernstein's work, and actually when I thought about transitioning into a coaching business, it was because I had found her work. I'd signed up for one of her her group coaching because I was struggling at my job. I worked in career consulting and placing candidates within Fortune 500 companies, and I'd signed up for her coaching course a couple of years ago, and I'm there watching on live stream, and I'm seeing her do her thing, and she's being very transparent and very authentic and helping people, and I just got good vibes from it, and I was like, that's what you're supposed to be doing. And it wasn't just that's what you're supposed to be doing, it was also you're kind of already doing this. You know, you're doing it informally through your blog, helping people with their careers and their money, but you're also doing it at your full-time job as a career consultant. How can we combine this and just build your own brand? So I really like her because she's very transparent, and a lot of her work has actually helped me get to where I am today.
And you personally, what resources do you use to become a better entrepreneur? Tools or, books, whatever those resources may be.
Well, I definitely use the tools in my book all the time. I'm very transparent on the fact that I literally use the stuff in there every single day, because it is something that I have to struggle with and something I work on with myself all the time. So definitely the tools in my own book. But aside from that, Book Yourself Solid by Michael Port was great. That book single-handedly changed my business. That's how I started getting my coaching clients and my speaking gigs. And I'd read a lot of business books and lots of books about quitting your job and all that kind of stuff. And that's the one that really stood out to me the most. I was like, oh, this is so simple. Like, this is amazing. And he just lays it out for you. So if you get that book, Book Yourself Solid, make sure to do all the exercises in the book. Don't just read it and pretend that you're going to put this stuff into place. Just do it as you're reading the book, and it will change your business. You will get those clients. And it'll really help you kind of set up a really solid foundation.
How did you manage to get published in Forbes and the Huffington Post and others as well? I mean, what can entrepreneurs learn from you in order to get into those publications?
I oftentimes tell people if you're going to become an expert in something, oftentimes all it really requires is having a really strong opinion and experience. So I remember when I first got picked up by a media outlet, I believe it was The Consumerist a couple of years ago, and my site almost crashed, and I was like, what happened? And I went to Google Analytics and I saw I'd been picked up by them. And they picked up one of my most controversial blog posts, which was why it's okay to be a boomerang kid. I was challenging the status quo. I'm not saying that you have to challenge the status quo or to challenge it in order to, get picked up, but have an opinion and stand by it and stand your ground and teach people and help them. And that eventually with time, you never know who's watching. You're always going to get eyeballs. I recently got interviewed by a print magazine, and it's going to be my first feature in a print magazine. And I'm like, well, how'd you find out about me? And they're like, oh, actually, Oprah's people told us about you. And that just goes to show you never, ever know who's watching. So stand your ground, be open to the opportunities, have an opinion, be passionate about what you're doing, help people, and really just focus on building those relationships. Don't do it. Oftentimes people, you may hear this in journalism or in writing, people do things for shock value. Don't do it for shock value. If you have an opinion, be genuine about it. And it'll do its thing.
You achieved a lot in your business. What is missing from the journey of those that fall short? And there's so many people that try, they either give up or, so many reasons they fail. I don't even like to use the word fail because I just wish that was a better word. But what's missing from the journey?
I think oftentimes it's the ability to trust yourself to be okay. And that's huge for people, and that goes for everyone. You just have to really trust in your ability to figure stuff out. So, oftentimes you'll have people, a deal falls through, and they think, oh, my business is over because the deal fell through. And it's like, no, man, there'll be another deal, around the corner, but you got to be open to it. And you got to trust your ability to see it and trust your ability to know it's there and trust your ability to land the next one. So it's just this really healthy dose of confidence and trust in yourself. And I think another thing that happens, and this is something I've had to learn, is don't talk business with people who don't know business. because they don't know, and they're going to start interjecting all these things like, oh, 8 out of 10 businesses fail, stop listening to that stuff and just do your thing and keep going.
So, yeah, I mean, that's a good point. And sometimes they say, you're the sum of maybe the 5 people you spend most of your time with, and just like you mentioned, interact with the right people. And I think that's so important. How do you build a following? I mean, it's hard to do business, especially online, without a platform, some sort of a following. What is your advice for somebody they're just starting out, they're blogging, they're writing a lot, they have 100 articles, but nobody comes to their site. How do they start out?
Build a community, build relationships. I did a talk for the Financial Blogger Conference last year, and one of them asked me, he was a beginning blogger, and he asked me, do I write for Google or do I write for like readers? And I said, forget Google, write for the people. And he was like, what? He was totally shocked. I'm like, yeah, Google's always changing the rules and algorithms, and they could change their mind next week and whatever. So write for people. You have 100 articles. Are you sharing those articles? Are you emailing people directly that could benefit from the information in those articles? Are you putting yourself out there? Are you letting people know what you do? Are you responding to tweets? Are you responding to Facebook? Are you genuinely trying to help people? And then for the technical side of things, get yourself an email list, that's a big mistake people make. That's a mistake I made for sure in the beginning. I think I went 6 months without an email list because I just didn't want to deal with it in the beginning. But start building it up. Those are the people who are going to share your stuff. They're going to come back again and again and again. They have opted into the information that you want, so give it to them.
What do you look at, let's say on a monthly or a yearly basis in terms of your business metrics? I mean, we talked about vanity metrics already, but what are some of the real metrics that matter to you in your business?
I try not to get hung up on numbers. I hardly ever go into Google Analytics. I can't even tell you how many subscribers I have. I really try not to worry about that stuff. Really, the only thing I try and do is just to talk to and help as many people as possible. So I may put a goal on myself, like, okay, do 10 free sessions this month. And I'll do it with, obviously, at the end of those sessions, if I think we're a good match, I'll try and pitch them on a coaching package. But I don't come into the session with the intention of, oh my God, I'm going to sell them at the end of this call. I come into it with, how can I help this person? And that really just completely changes things and takes you out of this like mental storm and the hang-ups people get into in terms of controlling and money and all that kind of stuff, and really just puts you in a place where you're vibing, you're calm, you're going to be okay. And the other person on the other line, at the end of the phone or at the other side of the email, they know, they can feel it. When you walk into a room and you don't want to deal with someone. Or an example I use in my book is like those multi-level marketing things. Not that there's anything wrong with multi-level marketing. I know a ton of people who've made great money and great businesses from multi-level marketing. But you may have been invited to an event where, it's like a makeup thing, for example, and like the person posted everything they knew on Facebook and they invited everyone they knew. You yourself were probably there as a favor, and the energy in the room is just all wrong because that the only reason they even invited you was to try and sell you, not because they're actually trying to help you.
Okay. What are some of the most important skills as an entrepreneur you want to improve this year, let's say in 2014?
Negotiating has been a big one for me, and asking for more. That's been something that I've been practicing in little ways every day.
Why do you need to? Is it about price negotiation? Is it about? I mean, can you go into that a little bit?
It's price negotiation. So on one spectrum, I don't feel like I should. I mean, just because someone else offers a service or a price doesn't mean people are flexible. Like, let's say you hire a VA and they're like, oh, well, let's do 20 hours. I'm here like, well, if I don't need 20 hours, can you do 8? Just like asking questions like that, and trying to find a happy medium for two people. Or services, like trying to negotiate down, but also just asking for more. I mean, one thing I've definitely had to learn how to do is for so long, I would like write all these free blog posts for brands and for people because I didn't know, right? I was just starting out. And now I get those and I realize, okay, time is kind of money, and what I'm basically doing is a sponsored post. So now right off the bat, and I'm like, okay, well, I can do that. If I like your product, I can offer a sponsored post that costs this much money.
Okay.
So, things like that.
Yeah, it's interesting because so many of us have trouble with that, and I don't understand why. But
because money, the entire second section of my book is all about sales. It's just traditionally seen as like this really slimy, grimy, let me shove something down someone's throat kind of a thing. And I really try and help change people's perspective on that, on like, if you're trying to put a roof over your head and you're trying to build a company, and you're trying to put food on the table, and you're supporting yourself and other people, and you are supporting this huge message through your brand or your business, it's okay to ask for money. There's nothing wrong with that.
So it's now 2014. You had a lot of success, but what is your dream business? Where do you want to be? Let's say maybe 5 years from now.
5 years from now, oh my gosh.
It sounds like an awful long time. Maybe to say 2 years from now.
Well, in 5 years, you know what I want to do? I've been thinking about this, where I want to take the brand, how I want to spread the message. And, I really want to create some sort of online platform where millennials can come, millennial entrepreneurs specifically, can come in and create masterminds with each other and network with each other. Because one thing I've seen as such a young entrepreneur and working with a lot of young entrepreneurs and young professionals is that when they go to local networking events, they're usually like the youngest person by 15 or 20 years. And I don't know if you've been to events like that, but like someone who started a business 20 years ago has a completely different view of entrepreneurship than someone who started it after the recession.
Yeah.
For example. So it's not that they're not learning things, it's just they feel kind of out of place. So I've started to do this in little ways. I'm starting to host monthly online workshops limited to 5 millennial entrepreneurs where they can come get business coaching from me and also help each other and network with each other and collaborate. But I want to take it to a bigger scale. I want to take it to a bigger extent because I think what has really happened, and at the core of my message, is we came of age during an economic downturn that has completely changed the way that we think about work and money, and that will affect us for the rest of our lives. So I really just want to create this platform where they can come in and help each other out and just, help each other out with their lifestyle businesses, their service-based businesses, their product businesses, and feel like they're within like-minded company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's an excellent point, and I haven't seen anything like that out there either. So if you created one, that would be awesome. What should a coach do for an entrepreneur? I mean, coaching is almost like I hear it all over, and there are a bunch of people that just say, "Hey, I'm a coach." First of all, how do I know who is the right fit for me? And what should a coach do for me? What is a realistic expectation of me as a business owner toward a coach?
Well, I can give you like the run-of-the-mill answers, like accountability and helping you set your goals and all these like really dry answers that are true. But I can tell you one really good thing that makes a coach a good coach. And in my experience, not just coaching, but also being a client of several different coaches, I think what really makes the good ones stand out is that they are teaching you to trust yourself. And they're not just telling you what to do. They are teaching you to trust your own intuition. They are essentially creating teachers so that, their client can go out and teach the next person and they can go out and teach the next person. I think that's what truly makes a really good coach, because that's what's going to make the most impact.
Do you have any last words of wisdom to share about building or growing a successful business? Maybe something I didn't ask, but that you think is really important?
My favorite quote, there is no such thing as certainty. So whether you're building a business or especially for people who are thinking about quitting their jobs to really go into their business full time, and they're really struggling with this idea of, oh, but a regular job is so stable. Newsflash, no, it's not. You could get a pink slip next week for no reason, or, the company could go under, or the economy could tank again. Like, you don't know. You don't have control over it. You don't have control over anything. Really, the only two certainties we have in life are, death and taxes, and at least we know when we have to pay our taxes. So if you're getting hung up on this idea of like certainty, forget about it. There's no way for you to know. Just go for it.
It's almost, I feel like that people are hanging on to something, an old idea in a new world. People still associate safety and security with a job in 2014 when that really hasn't been true for maybe 20, 30 years anyway. So, it's kind of, I think, just culturally, we have to catch up to the reality of what's happening today in the world in general, at least in the U.S. and in Europe.
Yeah, actually, that came up in another interview I was doing. That came up, and we were discussing. We were both former recruiters and headhunters, and we were talking about more traditional work. And it came up in terms of like, if you're still hanging on to this idea that the economy is going to go back to how it was before the recession, you're screwed. It's not going back. Get with the program. This whole idea of like working for the same company for 30 years, done. This whole idea of, you're going to get your pension at the end of it and the gold watch and all this stuff, done. This whole idea of like your degree determines the rest of your career, done. So really just start learning it just goes back to that thing I said in the beginning. Start learning how to be flexible and open to opportunities. Did the recession bring a lot of challenges? Of course. And change is really scary for people and for everyone, myself included, but it also brings a lot of opportunities that weren't there before. And you have to be open to them.
So, Amanda, how can people connect with you to either find out more about what you do or how you can help them?
You can go to my website, amandaabella.com. Abella spelled A-B as in boy, E-L-L-A, and you can sign up for the newsletter. There's a bunch of free goodies like, videos and workshops and things like that. Or you can if you want a really deep introduction into what it is that I do, you can check out my book on Amazon. It's called Make Money Your Honey. It'll be the first one that pops up.
Amanda, thank you very much. And be sure to check her out at amandaabella.com. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.